He was known as Cadillac Jack, and depending on who you talk to in his hometown of Meriden, Connecticut, John J. Cadillac Jack Baltus was either a good-hearted guy, albeit rough around the edges, or a violent crime lord and a stain upon the community he claimed to love. Here are the indisputable facts. As a young man, Baltus founded the Diablos Motorcycle Club in California before bringing the faction east to the place of his birth. From there, the group branched out, forming chapters around New England and beyond. And with Baltus at the helm, for some 3 decades the Diablos were linked to murders, drug running, all manner of mayhem. Of course, Cadillac Jack would say he knew nothing about all that, and for years, the burly, bearded leader of the Diablos managed to avoid serious jail time. That is, until the feds infiltrated his club. Welcome to Wicked, Connecticut. John J. Baltus was born on August 25, 1941, and raised in the central Connecticut city of Meriden, a working-class community home to some 60,000 residents. Cadillac Jack grew up in a 2-family house in a largely Irish and Italian neighborhood. He attended Meriden schools, and from an early age, loved motorcycles. While he was no angel as a kid, Baltus wasn't a big troublemaker either, and when, barely out of high school, he departed Meriden for California, his good name remained intact in his hometown. Soon after arriving in California, Baltus formed the Diablos Motorcycle Club in San Bernardino. The year was 1964. Diablo translates to devil, of course, and the club's insignia consists of a bearded, top-hat-wearing demon. The Diablos are a whites-only faction, and members are required to own firearms. Not surprisingly, the group is a one-percenter club, so named because the American Motorcyclist Association has said that 99% of riders are law-abiding citizens. After spending more than a decade in California, in 1973, Cadillac Jack Baltus moved back east, and Meriden, Connecticut became the Diablos' national headquarters. Painted in red and black, the Diablos' no-frills brick clubhouse was located at 156 Grove Street in Meriden, next door to Baltus's apartment. Between Cadillac Jack and his motorcycle gang, it didn't take long for police cars to become a frequent presence on that stretch of road. Throughout the 70s and 80s, Baltus was fined and jailed on a number of charges, including gambling, assault, possessing a silencer for a firearm, and distributing stolen motorcycle parts. Several other members of the Diablos ran afoul of the law as well. Despite all this, many Meriden residents considered Baltus and company to be a net positive in the community. There are stories of club members buying ice cream for kids and coming to the aid of locals in need. Also, over the years, certain Meriden police officers actually credited Baltus's crew with helping them make arrests. Speaking to a reporter about the Diablos, one Grove Street resident said, "If they go, I'm moving out. They keep a lot of trouble out of here." That sentiment was echoed by another neighbor who stated, "The police kind of do an okay job. But for me, the Diablos used to watch the streets more than the cops." The father of 13, Cadillac Jack Baltus, twice ran for public office in Meriden, and while unsuccessful in those bids, more than 1,000 city residents cast votes for him each time. Most law enforcement officials never saw Baltus as a lovable rogue, however. From their perspective, his motorcycle club was nothing more than a front for trafficking drugs and stolen vehicles, a gang that maintained its turf with force. Based on the belief the Diablos may have been responsible for the 1992 slayings of 3 rival gang members, the FBI recruited an informant to infiltrate the Connecticut and Massachusetts chapters of Cadillac Jack's army. The investigation ramped up in October of 1994, when a confidential informant began hanging out with the Diablos in Springfield, Massachusetts. Months later, the FBI spy was still in good with the Diablos, and in March of 1995, he was made a full member of the club, giving him access to meetings in Meriden and Springfield. With the FBI as a silent partner, in the summer of '95, the entrenched informant opened a motorcycle shop in Chicopee, Massachusetts, allowing him to purchase stolen bikes and cars from the Diablos. Also, the government collaborator bought firearms from and set up drug deals with the outlaw bikers. Baltus and his crew were in a load of trouble. They just didn't know it yet. On April 11, 1996, heavily armed FBI agents burst into the Diablos Grove Street clubhouse as part of a series of strikes in Connecticut and Massachusetts. The federal investigation resulted in 17 indictments. The charges ranged from conspiracy to commit murder to illegal transport of a firearm. And this time, Cadillac Jack would face a stiff punishment. While Baltus was convicted of just one federal charge, conspiracy to possess and distribute heroin, that count carried heavy penalties. In March of 1999, 57-year-old Cadillac Jack Baltus was sentenced to more than 15 years in federal prison. A reporter covering the trial stated that, in court, Baltus no longer resembled a Rough Rider. The journalist wrote, "Baltus's thick gray beard covers much of his face. His long, stringy hair is tied back with a rubber band. He is overweight. Even drawing a breath seems to come with difficulty. Still, Baltus is charismatic," the reporter added. Jovial throughout deliberations, he eased the nerves of his fellow defendants and their families by mocking the government's case. Baltus's lawyer portrayed his client as a father figure who tried to steer his members away from drugs and violence. "We're just a bunch of boys who never grew up," Baltus said in court. "I'm sure there were things members did that I didn't know about, but that had nothing to do with the Diablos." During the trial, U.S. District Court Judge Michael A. Ponsor said he received 50 letters in support of Baltus, including from a former police officer and a nun. "Certainly I am struck by the numbers of letters in Baltus's behalf and the positive things that are said about him," the judge stated, "but there are other things that have been said in this court about the malignant effect the Diablos had on lives. Like all of us, Baltus's true nature can't be easily defined. No one is all good or all bad." Special Assistant U.S. Attorney Jeffrey Kinder admitted as much during his prosecution of Cadillac Jack. "History is full of criminals and villains who are compassionate and generous with their neighbors and yet completely different in their dealings on the street," said Kinder. Referring to Baltus, the government attorney stated, "He took a group of misfits and turned them into a group of organized thugs. The notion that he did this out of brotherhood or loyalty is laughable." John J. Cadillac Jack Baltus died in Leominster, Massachusetts on April 22, 2012, 2 days after being released from prison. He was 70 years old. While it's difficult to determine what the state of the Diablos Motorcycle Club is these days, as Cadillac Jack predicted in court, the gang has lived on. "The Diablos aren't dead," Baltus said before the jury announced its verdict. "If I go, it's no big deal. I'm not the Diablos. They're still going to do what we've always done, ride motorcycles and have fun. No matter what the government does, they can't kill the Diablos." Attorney Jeffrey Kinder wasn't convinced about that. "This conviction certainly leaves the Diablos in a state of disarray," the government prosecutor said. "We don't think there's anybody with the personality, the leadership ability, to take the place of Baltus." I would like to give a shout out to the many journalists whose work I poured over in order to piece together this narrative. Much obliged. Thanks for listening to Wicked Connecticut. Feel free to email me. The address is in the show notes. Until next time, I'm your host, John Haynes.